We're in. Welcome, chaps.
All right, how you all doing?
How's it going? You all right?
Good. Yeah, good. Guys, you might have noticed a different voice on the end of the podcast there. So today, myself and Scott are joined by the Exp UK expansion leader, Mr. Adam Day. So good to have you here, Adam.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I've been listening in intently over the last few weeks. It's been very interesting listening to you guys.
Who do you think comes across the best?
Well, now you put me on the spot because I've only listened to like 1.5 of them.
Oh, here we go. No, it's coming out in the wash.
Yeah. No, you both come across great. You agree far too much, though. I mean, there needs to be a bit more needle in there, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've said that before, but then the problem is, then we say, I've said to Ben before we get on it, right, we've got to disagree. Whenever you do, it's really, really important. And then Ben just says things and I find myself going, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, same. I don't think we've because I think when we was literally planning it, we had there was very little plan or thought that went into it, but we had a quick conversation and Scott said actually, I think it's important that we don't agree all the time. Like, let's not be confrontational, but it's okay to disagree with each other and, get two sides of an argument. And since then, we've pretty much agreed on everything that we spoke about.
Yeah. Well, I think partly because Ben and I both approached this with, I think Ben and I were both quite blinkered in that if we go back to the original point, when we first started, I said social media was a load of nonsense and it was all about direct mail. Ben said direct mail was a load of nonsense, all about social media. And we've both been proved wrong in that sense. We've both adapted. So I think now Ben and I are almost a little bit nervous to keep those blinkers on. So we approach everything a bit more open-minded now, don't we, mate? I think.
Well, I think you've learned from each other, haven't you, as well? We've all learned from each other. That's been the beauty of the last 18 months is that, so then you do actually start agreeing with everybody because you go, all right, there's some social proof of it working there. There's some social proof of it working there as well. So yeah, I'm not surprised you're agreeing on stuff, but yeah,
that's great. I mean, how cool is that though, right? Like I'm able to adapt my approach to running my business from learning about some fella doing it up in Blackpool. Like we're literally on we're opposite ends of the country and opposite east and west, right? So you're northwest, I'm southeast. And we're able to talk. And actually, it turns out the vast majority of headaches we face are the same. And therefore, we can share how we overcame those things and collaborate and adapt together, which just doesn't seem like that should have been possible, but it is.
No, that's massive as well, mate, because I know we've said this a few times now, but that kind of collaboration piece and being able to, I guess, challenge each other's thinking, or in our case, agree a lot, but sort of see, you kind of learn that the problems and the obstacles and the objections and the setbacks and the downtimes that you experience in that moment, it always feels like you're up against it. But actually, when you open your eyes, you see that your challenges aren't unique. And there's someone else in the network who's gone through that whole process and had those same barriers and overcome it and built a business off of the back of it. So that's been, to be honest, probably the most surprising thing for me coming into this, because when I started, it was very much, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Cheers, guys. Just leave me to it. Don't need to speak to anyone. Very blinkered. And then I've realized actually maybe I needed more help than what I thought I did coming out the traps.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why, without making this an EXP fest, why is that for you boys? Is that, like, I don't see any other, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know. How do people get together in other models? I mean, we've got Workplace, which obviously I think I say to people all the time, it's our secret weapon. Has that been the thing that sort of allowed you to connect, or is it the fact we only allow experienced agents? I don't know. What do you think the difference is? I don't see it others. I don't see it other similar models personally. Maybe I'm missing something though.
I think my view on that is because everything's so transparent. So I can see who's got what pipeline. I can see who's listing what. I can see who's selling what. I can see people all over social media and achieving different things. And because there's now, I won't say the figure, but lots and lots and lots of EXP agents, you can almost pick and choose who you take what from. So this is what I say to people all the time. Like, if you come on board and you're struggling for instructions, you'll be able to very visibly see who's doing really well in that area. And you can literally reach out to that person. So if you look at how Ben and I now collaborate, we actually collaborate because of each other's initial weaknesses and short-sightedness. So the reason I talk to Ben a lot, many reasons, but one of the main ones is because Ben was doing so well on social media, which was an area that was so alien to me, completely alien to me. I wasn't even on Facebook till February. But equally Ben, who was completely closed-minded, I think, maybe
100%.
On direct mail, suddenly sees that I go and list so many houses in my first 6 weeks, is then able to say, well, hang on a minute, let me pick your brains on this issue. And I think what you get in agency, you get a lot of people who are very loud but saying very little. They're not actually revealing anything, whereas this actually enables you to go, right, I've got a hole in my business. I can see that person is doing particularly well in that area. I'm going to go and pick their brains.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the reason you can do that, though, and to kind of add like another level to that question that you just asked, Adam, I think genuinely, like I've kind of got into this mindset of enjoying speaking and collaborating to other agents. And I think it's kind of infectious that when you kind of lead with that willingness to help, you start to see more people following suit. And then all of a sudden we've got this cultural shift where everyone almost likes to help and see everyone else succeed. And I know this sounds like I'm laying this on thick, but genuinely, because of the whole, and we've not even spoke about this in any past episodes, not from what I can remember, Scott, anyway, but the whole thing about, we're all co-shareholders in EXP. We've all got stocks and shares in the parent company. So I very much look onto that as my baby. It's almost my business. I might as well be the CEO for all I care in my own mind, because I know that when Scott sells a house in Margate, or when, anyone else sells a property anywhere else in the country, that's contributing towards the value of a business that I'm a shareholder in. So I think culturally we've made a massive shift, but also commercially, it kind of makes sense to help people. And I think when those two things come together, that's kind of the undercurrent that helps everyone else up their game and continue to push standards when it comes to performance.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. That ownership of the business is massive for me. You've got ownership of your business, but ownership of the big business. For me, that was one of the biggest game changers. Any business that, guess what? I mean, I think I might have said this. I'm sure I said this to you boys, but my biggest thrill in the estate agency was owning Hatched and selling it to the Connells Group. Was my biggest thrill at Country Properties when I left with nothing? When I was at Easy Property, left with nothing? When I was at eMove, left with nothing? No, it definitely wasn't. It was leaving Hatched and selling it and banking some money. And so therefore, my next move was always going to be having some sort of skin in the game, because that was a big thing for me, was having that excitement and that thrill in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, whenever it is, to exit and have an exit basically. That was a big thing for me with it.
So what about how you felt while you were there? So the feeling when you leave, obviously when you left Hatched, you sold Hatched, I'm sure did very well out of that. So you had that initial buzz, but what about when you was actually how did you feel differently when you were working at Hatched and you knew that was your destination versus when you were employed at eMove or Easy Property?
Yeah, I've got to be careful how I say this, because I have a lot of time for Russell Quirk and I have a lot of time for John Cook, and they were my bosses there. And but there was no question that you find another 5% when you own the business. When I was Hatched, I was the first in, I was the last out. I was working Saturdays, working Sundays. Easy Property, I took very seriously. John was a great boss and a great mentor, and I learned a hell of a lot from him. I learned a hell of a lot from the business model, to be fair. But was I prepared to go and work on a Sunday? Not a chance. I was given my hours, and they were the hours I worked, and I went full throttle for those 8 hours a day or whatever it was. But if I had a chance to go and nick a McDonald's or a Nando's with the staff at the lunchtime, yeah, I would do that. But at Hatched, and never did any of that. It was always work the entire 7 days a week. My phone was always on. And actually, I find that now I'm back in that mindset now for the last 18 months since you guys started coming on board. And even before then, my phone is always on. I'm working Saturdays, I'm working Sundays. My wife loves it and hates it because I have that flexibility. I'm working from home, so that's good. But yeah, I'm back into that mindset that I was in from 2006 through to 2016 or whenever it was. Definitely.
It's mad though, because it's like it's not even that you have to do it; it's because the fire's in your belly, which is the major difference there. And it's no disrespect to eMove or Easy or anyone that you've worked with or for in the past, but it's just totally different when you've got that sense of ownership. It just gives you a sense of pride and commitment almost. I think that's hard to kind of replicate if it is that you're not in that sort of structure.
Yeah, I think the difference with this model though is that I know everyone else is a shareholder, so the Hatch thing was a very selfish move, and it is for all business owners, and that's no criticism of the way that businesses run in the UK. But I wasn't there to help others succeed. I was there to help me and me only. And now I know, now that you guys are all shareholders, and everybody in the network that joins and sell houses is shareholders. I want them to. My focus has changed on I want others to have that thrill. I want to help others have that thrill of an exit. So that's totally changed, because I want to help others rather than at the time I probably wanted to help myself.
So, mate, on that, just to kind of take this back a few steps then, for those that aren't kind of in the know, I guess, with how this all came around and how and why this all came together and why you saw the opportunity you did at EXP. It's all well and good saying this now, and you said a few times you guys were all shareholders. Back when you started, it wasn't the case. You was the sole agent on the ground at EXP UK. And not even that, you'd also set up your own independent business, a separate brand called Belt and Braces, if I remember right. And you made a very deliberate pivot in your mission to kind of put that to one side and hang up the measuring stick with Belt and Braces. And you decided to embrace this at the time, what you could only perceive as a US type model, and bring that into a UK market where, let's be honest, and this is no criticism to other models out there, but they've not really had much success in the past. So talk me through why you decided to make that pivot, given that you'd seen other companies fail, I guess, to an extent, in that they've got no traction, versus turning your back on Belt and Braces, a business that you've got the skill set and the experience to make work. How big a decision was that? And ultimately, why did you decide to bring EXP to the UK?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's quite a difficult one, really, because so I left eMove in the October, and that business, I went out of business in the November. I sort of knew the writing was on the wall, so I got out of there, and the guys from EXP one of the guys from EXP did get in touch in the October, pretty much as soon as I left eMove. He got in touch Barry, that is, got in touch in October. I said, hey, we're thinking of bringing this, if we went worldwide, would you be interested? And I said, well, I'm not really sure, I'm not too bothered. Because it's an American company, and that's, they've always struggled. And then so I went about and started setting up Belt and Braces, and spent probably £20,000+ on a website, on branding, on the domain name. Cost me a fortune. That alone cost me a couple of £1,000, that on its own.
I thought that when I heard the name, I was like, did you have that as a URL? It must have cost.
Yeah, no. beltandbraces.com. I still own it, so if anyone wants to buy it, I need at least £3,000 for it. But yeah, so I bought that, and so went forward, and I was still in discussions with EXP all the way up until March, and sort of February time, March, whenever it was, and the more they told me about it, the more it felt like how I wanted to take Belt and Braces forward. It was really weird. It was a personalised, Belt and Braces was going to be 495 up front and 2.5% on completion. And it was going to be Belt and Braces. We were going to include conveyancing, mortgages, like we were going to mortgage advice. We were going to include everything in it from start to finish, removals, like the whole lot. It was all in the business plan, but it was proper fees. It wasn't, £600 that I'd been charging for the previous 15 years. And so I hadn't really thought about the licensing aspect, which, I'd looked at Purple Bricks, understood the model, and sort of having those Belt and Braces agents around the country was sort of on the radar. But I thought, let's just get started up first. Let's just smash Hitchin, see how it works, and then we'll look at that. And I wanted to use a lot of video. I wanted to use Workplace. I'd come across Workplace when I was running Easy Property, and I'd said, why don't we use Workplace? Great idea, brilliant platform. And it had been sort of said, no, we don't need that type of thing. Right decision for that business, to be fair. And there was, every time EXP I thought I was just going to do consultancy for EXP. I thought they just wanted me to do 1 day a month of consultancy of how to get going in the UK. And that was part of the reason that I carried on with Belt and Braces, because I just assumed it was just a day or two a month. And every time they kept telling me stuff and saying, this is how it works, I kept thinking, I can translate this to the UK. This is actually very similar to the Belt and Braces model that I wanted to take forward. Proper fees, videos, personalization, let's look at licensing agents around the country in the future type thing. And every time they told me something new, I got more and more bought into it. And then all of a sudden they said, right, we want you to take it to the UK and launch it and be our man. And that was a decision that only probably took a few hours to think about. Spoke to the wife and said, look, I've got this Belt and Braces thing, but I reckon it's got a good brand, good chance, but EXP is already there. The infrastructure is already built. The craziness of the model with the splits, the revenue share, the equity obviously in the business, there was those two added things that just really made a big difference for me. Was when I started understanding the commission splits, because maybe with Belt and Braces I don't know how I'd have done it. I probably hadn't worked it out at that time, and I guess it felt like EXP had worked all that out for me. That was probably the key. And yes, I could have done it myself, and yes, I could have said to EXP, now thanks for all the knowledge and all the model, I'll just put this into Belt and Braces. But frankly, they'd already done it. They've already got the platform. I looked at the virtual world and all of that stuff blew my mind, and it was a pretty easy decision to make, really, in the end.
How difficult was it to, I mean this with the most respect in the nicest possible way, but how hard was it for you to put your ego to one side, all the ego that you had tied up in belt and braces? You had your branding done, you had the name, you had the URL, you had a full business plan ready to execute, which I know how that feels. It feels like your baby when you've kind of brought all that together. How difficult was it to park that and be like, actually, I'm going to work with these guys now?
It was really easy, actually. There was probably a part of me that didn't want to do it all over again. I've done it with Hatched, and the ego was huge back then, and I thought I was a kind of a big deal. But you soon realise when you sell that business that your ego, it's gone now. The business is closed down. Connors will close it down in whatever the year was, 2018. It's died along with everything else that I did and created. And yes, at the time it was sad, but I look back at it now and realise it was just a name. I mean, it was nothing. It was just a name. I did well. I sold it. I got what I wanted to get out of it. Happy days. And then you just got to go again. And whether I did that with belt and braces or EXP, it didn't really matter, to be honest. It was very easy to park the ego.
And when you first kicked off then, mate, because obviously, like, I remember our first conversation, like, very, very, very well. I think I was just like, I approached you on LinkedIn. I'd seen a bit of noise that you was making, thought, oh, this sounds quite interesting. And we reached out and we had a conversation, and you was telling me on the phone about, this vision, and you was telling me a bit about the history and how the UK market's ripe for change and how this model is going to slot in perfectly. And we're going to give entrepreneurs all this freedom and autonomy to build a business. And I heard it, but I wasn't listening because I was just thinking very much like it's the Ben Moore show. I'm just thinking, what can I get from this on a very selfish level? Like, how can this benefit me rather than how can this benefit the whole industry? So at that point, when it was just, I think I was agent number 5. So there must have only been, a handful of people on the ground at that point. Did you 100% see things going the way they have, or have you been quite surprised by how the last sort of 15, 16 months has unfolded?
No, I'm a good salesman. No, I mean, I'm a good salesman. I think I'm good at simplifying the message, making it very much your name above the door. That was one of my big things, simplify the message, make it really, really easy for agents to understand, and see how it goes from there. The US were a massive support, but, Barry, Rich, but also the leadership like Jeff Whiteside and Jason Gessing and Glenn, and, huge support. And also I'm a bit of an estate agency geek, so I've studied. I know how Purple Brit scaled up. I know how Yopa scaled up. I know, and not to compare us to those guys because they're on the lower end of the fee scale, but the fundamentals of the model are the same, where you have self-employed agents. And but I knew what the pain points were at those businesses, and I'd also studied Keller Williams. I knew the Keller Williams model, understood it, felt that I knew the reasons why it hadn't taken off as quickly as they wanted it to. No criticism if that's in their words back in 2014, whenever it was. I'd sat on panel sessions with the guys that originally brought Keller Williams to the UK, so I'd noted from a very early stage of their development why I felt that could be communicated better and simplified in the message. And so yeah, no, I didn't have a clue, and I'm the kind of person to fly by the seat of my pants and take a risk on stuff, as I was with belt and braces, as I did with Easy Property, as I did with Hatched. So, that was, it's that whole regret thing, isn't it? Like, I'd have kicked myself if EXP had come into the UK with a different leader and absolutely smashed it, then I'd be kicking myself right now, wouldn't I?
Well, with that in mind then, so do you think EXP would be where it is today if it was a different person, a different leader?
Oh my God, that's
honestly, because that's what's interesting to know what you think about that. I mean, I've got a thought on that, but I'm not going to tell you yet.
But it's going to sound really big-headed, and or I don't know.
Well, then we know what you're going to say now. So
yeah.
The answer is no. Okay, it would have failed.
No, I think the answer is yes and no. I think the timing for every business in the world it's about timing. Most businesses in the world that succeed, it's about timing. And if this was launched 5 years ago, it didn't matter who was in charge, it would have failed, no question. Yeah. in my mind. Toot my own horn a little bit. I don't think there's many people in the UK that could have done the model because of the experiences that I've had with Hatched and then Easy and being at Connells as well. They taught me a load, taught me loads of good stuff. And that whole sort of journey, the mistakes that we've made, Easy Property, understanding at eMove when I went there that actually call center estate agency isn't the way forward. And so I think there's a few people that I think could have done the same job. I'm not going to name names because they're all currently employed, but there's probably 3 or 4 people that I think could have done it. But again, toot my own horn and sound like a bit of a big head. I think I'm probably one of only 4 or 5 people in the UK that could have done it, is my personal view.
It was you that said, you insisted, which is really easy to look back on this decision and think it was obvious, but it was you that said that agents must have a minimum of 2 years experience, right? So I think you almost battled that with the US because it's very different over there. People get a qualification and can just walk straight into real estate with a bit of tutoring. But you insisted on that, and I happen to think that that's one of the biggest keys to us being successful, and as successful as we have been. But it would have been very easy to have caved in on that, wouldn't it? And just taken everyone you could have got, especially in the early days.
A very brave move as well, just to kind of add to that, because restricting your market somewhat, which is effectively what you did, is very brave in hindsight. Like you say, it's all well and good. Now we're coming out the other side and we're seeing how powerful that's been for us. But back then, that must have been a pretty scary proposition, surely.
Yes, key decision. Yeah, key decision that was. And it was one of the things. It was one of the conditions that I took the role, was when I spoke to the US. Was, I had 2 conditions. One was we anglicised everything, so we got rid of the words real estate, got rid of the words realty, real estate agent, all of this stuff that we don't use over here. And the second condition was experienced agents only. And they agreed to them as long as they had 2 conditions themselves. And the first one was no territories. Everyone can trade wherever they want to trade. There's no territory. Don't do territories over here. And I said, okay, that's fine. And the second condition, I can't remember the second condition now. There was another one, but it will come to me. But we traded 2 conditions, and that was good with me. That worked.
So, quick question, like not so much about EXP, but just a question that I'm keen to ask you on a selfish level. What's the transition been like in your own head as a leader coming into this? Because I think it's a fascinating dynamic that really whether you want to put yourself on that pedestal or not, effectively you are the UK expansion leader, right? So by definition, you're the guy at the helm who's been driving it from day one. So everyone looks up to you in that respect, and everyone needs a different version of Adam and different types of support depending on where they're up to as an agent and what they're like as people. How do you manage those relationships and cater for everyone without dictating to people, without asking about forecasts, without putting targets and KPIs in place? How do you manage that dynamic? Because I think that's something that I would have definitely struggled with if it had been me in the position that you're in. It's a bit of a strange one. It's a bit of an odd conundrum.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to a few people as well. I'm not a very good manager, which is probably why it's a good role for me, because I don't have to manage anybody. I think you're either you're a good manager or you're a good leader or you're good at neither, and you're just a worker bee, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with any of those 3. But I'm certainly not a good manager. That's probably out of the 3, I'm the worst at. So I think, I don't know. Again, you have to get the feedback from agents of what they think. But again, I've accepted that some people are going to like me and some people aren't going to like me. I'll communicate with people on a level. I'm very, very honest and open with people. I think that's all people really want, is someone who's going to be themselves and someone who's going to be honest. When you look back at that situation we had with the branding, those were 47 very difficult phone calls I had to make at the end of February, early March, whenever it was. And 2 of them were to you boys. We had sort of 10, 15 agents leave as a result of all of that. But I think one of the things that I probably happy upside of that was the fact that I got a lot of buy-in from you guys about the fact that I'd actually I'd faced it head on. I'd talked to you about it very honestly and openly, and some people couldn't find a way through, and that's fine, but others could. We've come out the other side, and that I'm always going to tell you what I think and what's going on in the background, and as much as I can, obviously. But I'm very honest and as open as I can be, from as quickly as I can be, whenever I know something's coming down the track that we need to sort out centrally. So I think that's probably helped. As I say, the fact I'm not a very good manager is probably the biggest. It's probably the biggest help to not having to manage people. It's brilliant, you know, stuff to help people, and that's a great position to be in. Is not having to manage and cajole and bully and beast and all that stuff that you have to do at other businesses that I'm not very good at and don't like doing either.
Yeah, that was an interesting kind of example to isolate that, because when that whole thing kind of came about with the branding, obviously no fault of you or EXP, there was just a spanner thrown into the works, as sometimes happens with businesses that are quickly evolving and expanding. But obviously it was an uncomfortable conversation for you to have, and something you had to hit head on, something that you could have dug your head in the sand about, like I know a lot of other companies did at the time. And I kind of came into that conversation being a little bit angry, not at you, at the situation, and kind of thinking, this is BS, like going through that, you know, the pain points that you'd expect. But I actually came out the other side, not against you, actually wanting to help you in terms of helping you educate other agents and show people that there's actually a better way of doing things. So I don't know whether that was by design or that happened just by mistake, but the way that you handled that situation, I think from my side of things as an agent, I don't know how you feel, Scott, but definitely put you up a few notches in terms of how I rated you as a leader and how I admired your approach and honesty and transparency through that whole saga.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, we've all been there before when you can see that an obstacle's coming, and then your directors start building up this big build up to it and start manipulating the situation. You can see the obstacle coming anyway. So you know where it's all going when they start to tee you up for certain things. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that just makes me more mad. Like, just come and tell me, I can take it. We're in business together. If we've got an obstacle coming, just tell me head on, and we'll just deal with it together. And so in a way, I mean, it was disarming really, weren't it, Ben? Because like you said, you couldn't even be annoyed with Adam about it. Just look back and you'd be annoyed about, disappointed with the situation, but you couldn't focus that anger on an individual. But in a way, I mean, I guess to touch on the branding issue, because we might need to explain to anyone listening what that was, so I'll let you do that, Adam. But also when you explain what the issue was as freely as you're happy to, and then also how in a way I kind of view it now as maybe one of the better things that's happened for us.
Blessing, yeah, I think it was, we tripped over that one. I tripped over that one by accident more than judgment, but so basically, just to, like I say, to explain to people listening, in the US, it's very common for brands to be powered by EXP or by other models in the US for that matter. So, you know, Gunn and Moore estates powered by EXP is totally acceptable in the US. What they don't have in the US is Rightmove. And so by powering brands, we were essentially giving backdoor access, let's call it, to Rightmove, because it's a bit like, you know, Connells saying to YourMove, here you go, YourMove, you can share our Connells Rightmove feed, but you can be YourMove outwardly to the public. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I mean, Connells and YourMove wouldn't ever do that, but Rightmove are not going to allow it, because all of a sudden, all of the Rightmove account they've got goes through to Connells, and Connells benefit, you know, so it's just not going to happen. So Rightmove contacted me, explained it in that way, and I said, yeah, totally get that. How come others are getting away with it? Oh, we didn't spot it. You know, we didn't realize that was going on. So I say that was January 2020 when I first got that call from Rightmove, and they were very good about it. I must say they gave us loads of time and had lots of discussions about, you know, the fact, and they were actually quite apologetic, and sort of said, you know, we're really sorry. It was only because, you know, again, because I've got a relatively a bit of a name in the industry. They were watching what I was doing, because I've done Hatch, did Easy Property, you know, all the other bits and pieces, and so apparently they were watching what I was up to, and that's why they came across it. And so yeah, they had a conversation with me in January. I think by the end of January, in fact, I think it was the 31st of January. I was in Newcastle. It was when the first COVID case was announced, and I was in Newcastle, and I was in Newcastle that day. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get COVID from the very first day. But yeah, we had a meeting in the virtual world on that Friday, and I was on the train on the way back. And I'd been talking to Ian Dobrin about it a lot, and Ian Dobrin was a great help as well throughout that, because he was one of the first people I spoke to and said, you know, got a bit of an issue, you know, what do we do here? So what do you think? And so I took that meeting. It was very awkward. I'd had those 47 calls. In fact, we met you as well, hadn't I, Ben? We've met both of you, hadn't I, in various locations around that sort of time.
Yeah, we caught up in Manchester. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd explained it all and sort of said it, and and you know, that was the 31st of January is when we sort of said, right, these are the three choices. You either you can leave EXP, that's one choice, or I think there was two choices actually, or and the second choice is you drop your brand and become Ben Moore powered by EXP and Scott Gunn powered by EXP. But ultimately, you've got to become an EXP agent. You can't be Gun Moore Estates powered by EXP. You've got to become an agent of EXP, just like Purple Bricks have agents of Purple Bricks and Yopa and David Lee and Benjamin Stevens and everybody else. They're all branded by the top brand. And when I look back now, it's just ridiculous to think that we even could have got away with that when you think of it in that way. But, you know, when Rightmove sort of vetted me, they said, oh, what's the model? I said, oh, it's the same as Keller Williams. And Rightmove said, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. We know how they operate. And it turned out they didn't know how they operated. So we're all on a level playing field now. And, you know, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and you got to say, like, you know, credit to Rightmove, because at the end of the day, you know, they handled a tricky situation with complete transparency, and they're only protecting their business as well at the end of the day. And I guess at that point, though, and this isn't me trying to blow our own trumpet, but they'd never seen anything sort of scale and get to the point that we did as quickly as we were. That momentum was just, I mean, I don't know what your forecast looked like and what the guys in the US were expecting coming out the traps, but I think looking back in terms of production and how listings have gone and how it's just exploded, I don't think anyone could have imagined that level of growth. So in many ways, it's probably good that it did get discussed so openly and freely when it did versus 3 years down the line, because that would have been a difficult genie to try and get back in the bottle.
Oh, it'd have been impossible. Yeah, it was perfect. The timing was perfect. You know, it's January. It was 2 months before lockdowns. You know, we only had, I say, 47 agents on board at that time. We lost 15 or so, you know, pretty quickly in the February and March because of that, which was fine as well. Totally respected their reasons for wanting to move away from EXP. It was a blessing in disguise that it happened so early, and actually a blessing in disguise for the whole business, because I think it is about the person, and I keep saying it's about the agent, not the agency. And I heard in your last podcast actually where you were talking about hiding behind a brand, and it was so easy. It's so easy to hide behind a brand. You know, you have all these journeymen in my hometown of Hitchin, and they've been to Puttrell's and they go to Connell's and they don't like corporate, so they go back to country properties and they move to, you know, Stonegates or whatever. And yet actually it's they're not doing their personal reputation any good, and they're not doing the brand's reputation any good. But by being the person, you have to be accountable, and you can be that agent for life then at that point, which makes it much more viable as a business and put your fees up. And there's so many benefits to it. It's unbelievable.
Well, you know who you are. That's the thing. I mean, when I started my brand, which was Victoria Scott Property Service Limited, I remember like having to sit down and brainstorm what that brand stood for. And I'm like, what do I want the perception of this brand to be? And, you know, how do I want the brand to come across? And what do I want people's first reaction to be to my branding? And actually, it was quite confusing, because I found myself almost going, well, Victoria Scott, but I thought that sounded a little bit middle upper end. So all of a sudden I'm sort of, what I actually ended up doing is I ended up fitting my brand to match the branding, which is not the right way to do it. Whereas as soon as I become Scott Gunn powered by EXP, I knew exactly what that meant. That meant me, which I knew exactly how to pitch me. You know, it meant no bullshit. It meant talking to people directly. It meant, you know, being direct with the valuation, being transparent about the fee. I knew what it meant right away. Even now I can reel it off, whereas I didn't know what my brand meant. And I think a lot of people do that. Sometimes you see business. Have you ever seen a business when you think, I think they came up with a name before they came up with the concept there? Like they've come up with a great idea before they come up with, like there's a cleaning company. They're not going to listen to the podcast. There's a cleaning company near me called like Cleanderella. And I'm thinking, like, you've literally come up with that name and then worked backwards. Like, well, it's got to be a cleaning company then. And so for me, it gave quite a lot of clarity. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people. I think it meant that people knew how to get the rubber on the road.
100%. I love that kind of comparison that you just made, because I think it was just that shift. It's kind of simplified what could have been a complex problem, maybe something that potentially you was overthinking, that could have ended up in a lot of procrastinating and maybe going off in the wrong different direction and not getting to the point that you got as quickly as you did. And I think the other lesson as well, like just kind of from a macro perspective in terms of EXP, not our respective businesses and how we handled that as individuals, but you know, sometimes the biggest challenges can turn out to be the biggest opportunities. And I know it sounds a bit cliche, but pressure makes diamonds. Because back then, I could imagine, whilst you've obviously handled it like a pro, Adam, there must have been a bit of squeaky bum and how many agents are going to leave and what's the fallout going to be, and you know how could this go? It's going to go one in two ways. Either it's going to be the making of us and it's going to be great and we're going to build from it and come back stronger, or are we going to get stopped before we've even got out of first gear? Thankfully, it was the former, but you know, like you say, it was that challenge and that obstacle that's kind of been a bit of a springboard, I guess, to allow us to kind of go on to the heights that we have since. So I don't think there's any issue or any kind of barrier that you can encounter in your business that you can't come through stronger, as long as you've got the right mindset and the right people around you and the willingness to smash through that wall.
Yeah, it's the right mindset. It's communicating correctly to the people who've been disappointed, and it's getting the messaging right for the people going forward. And those were the sort of the things that I concentrated on. And you know, we didn't really allow any grey areas. I mean, there was a few grey areas when we were first sort of transitioning over, but we were very clear for new agents joining. You know, come March, really, we were saying, right, these are the rules. There's no, you know, oh yeah, well, what about Scott Gunn with Victoria Scott, and what about Ben Moore with this, that, and the other? And I'm saying, right, those guys are in the business. They're staying in the business. They will be moving across, and they'll be evolving as we evolve. These are the rules. This is how it works. And again, that's one of the things I love about the model is there is no making it up as you go along. There is literally no making it up as you go along. There's no making up. You know, the monthly fees are the monthly fees. The cap is the cap. The split is the split. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, can we just move it to 75-25, just, you know, for the first 6 deals or something like that?" No, that's not the model. It's 70-30. We're not doing deals with people. That the model speaks for itself. You join based on what the model is, and I think, again, I don't know. Again, I ask you guys, but I think that's a real positive for people to know that they're being treated the same whether they're in Blackpool or Margate.
Well, put it the other way around, mate. And obviously, like, I'm not gonna bring other companies into this, but like, I can always say for myself, if I was working in Blackpool, and let's just say there's another EXP agent in Preston, if I found out that this guy in Preston had an 80-20 split, I was doing 70-30, my cap was 24, his cap was 15, and we had this disparity in the commercials of the business, I'd feel a little bit shafted, to be honest, mate. I think that equal playing field is massive, and I think how are you teeing up the right culture at scale if you're doing deals and moving goalposts and giving one agent a better package than another? That's just sending out the wrong message on every level, from the commercial aspects and the economics right the way down to culture on a ground level. Like, that's not the right undercurrent that you want running through the business. So I think that transparency and that equality and the fact that it's just an amazing package across the board, regardless of who you are and where you're working, is absolutely massive. And that's just another thing that feeds into that cultural piece, which for me is, when you strip all about the smoke and mirrors, when we take everything away from it, for me, it's that kind of culture and that being part of a high performing network on an equal basis that's allowed us to drive forward at the pace that we have, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree totally.
So, mate, we're however many months we are into growing EXP now in the UK. So I guess we're still fairly early stages in the grand scheme of things, but we're far further advanced to kind of have a good idea of where we're at, and we've got, you know, a bit of a macro overlook of different markets and different agents and different territories, all different fee scales. Buoyant markets where the fees are amazing, and on the other side where it's, you know, more of a challenging market and maybe fees traditionally are a little bit lower. For example, like me up in Blackpool. But what would you say now, after all the conversations that you've had with all the agents that have partnered with EXP over the last year or so? What are the kind of key attributes do you feel kind of separate, you know, a high performing agent who's going to build a great business with us versus someone who's maybe not going to quite make it? What are the core sort of skill sets or attributes that an agent needs to make this work?
Yeah, God, there's a few. I think I always say to people that they need to leave their ego at the door. And I think there's, you know, most people do, to be fair. You know, we have a lot of agents who come in and they go off on a direction, and they'll call me back after 3 or 4 months, and we call it the wall at EXP. And, you know, they hit the wall usually between months 3 and 4. It's the point at which they're not getting enough traction. They haven't banked any money. They're running out of cash themselves. And perhaps they just have to tweak one or two things, or just keep going. And there's been lots of conversations I've had where you just have to keep going. There's been lots of conversations where I say, well, have you done this? Have you done that? No, I haven't. Well, you need to go and do that then. The key attribute for me is understanding that you cannot just set up a website or set up your EXP website, so scottgunn.exp.uk.com, and put a few airy-fairy posts on Facebook and expect the whole world to be queuing up to list their houses with you. It doesn't work like that. Again, I go back to the days when I started EXP. I was able to leave my ego at the door, and I was getting down and dirty. I was phoning old contact. I was talking to people. I was putting myself out there on video, regularly. And that's why Ben got in touch, or Scott got in touch, because Scott had some bloke who said, oh, well, this is geezer Adam Day making a bit of noise. Go and speak to him. Now, if I'd have just posted one video on LinkedIn and said, oh, I'm doing EXP, I wouldn't have got either of those calls. That it was because I was consistent. I was religious. I was relentless at putting that stuff out there on social media, on press releases, making phone calls to old colleagues that I used to work with and seeing how they'd feel about it. If they didn't, then do they know someone else who does? That's how you start a business up. You don't just press a button and it just starts. And put your name to it, and all of a sudden people come queue into your door. You have to get down and dirty. And if people aren't prepared to do that, then they'll fail. There's a few lucky ones. I mean, you look at someone like Mark Bentley, who's like an EXP legend, ex-president of the NAA, and all he did, I mean, that's literally all he did, was put a post on Facebook. Hi, I'm going out on my own as Mark Bentley, but powered, I'm an EXP agent. All of a sudden, he had like a queue of people at his front door. But
the difference with that is that, me and Scott have had to start kind of hiking that mountain from the bottom, really, when we've started, as do most, 95% of agents. Mark's been climbing that mountain for 50 years, so he's earned the right, and to be able to do that, and he's got that personal brand, I guess. I know that kind of comes 360, but he's built that brand up over the decades to put him in that position where he's getting 5-figure fees just by clicking his fingers. And
hard work, getting in people's faces, relentless consistency, they're the attributes. If you've got those, I mean, if you're a good agent in the first place, I rate myself as a relatively good agent in Hitchin, and if I was out and about on the front line, I'd be getting down and dirty. I'd be in people's faces. I'd be smashing out the letters. I'd be smashing out my social media. And I say this to everybody, and those that do, and it does take time though. That if you're doing all those things correctly, it can still take 3 or 4 months before you start getting some proper traction. And it's a bit like the letters. Scott's a massive fan of letters. So am I. That was always how I built my businesses. Most people give up after, most people give up after 3 or 4 letters, and that's the point at which you've got to carry on, because it's letters number 6 and 7 that start working. Most people give up social media after 3 or 4 weeks probably as well, or 3 or 4, 2 or 3 months, and it's actually 3 or 4 months when it starts kicking in. And the same with business in general. If you give up after 3 or 4 months, that's exactly the point when you've got to push through and get to that month 6, 7, 8, and 9. Because you'll start seeing that regular business come in then. That's just my opinion. That's what I've seen anyway, for sure.
I think you've almost got to earn the right to be successful, because it's very easy. And that's something that I'm trying to get better at making clear through my social channels, because it's very easy for people to look into what we're doing and be like, oh, these guys are just doing podcasts every week and they're talking about earning all this money. And Ben did that video of that really fancy house with the designer kitchen. And it's like, well, actually, that's just a snippet that you're seeing of my day. Like, you've not seen. And Adam, mate, like, come on, you'll be testimony to this. How many times did I pick up the phone to you saying, look, I think I'm going to have to jack this in, mate. It's not working. I'm frustrating. I'm not honestly. And it's just totally normal to kind of come through that. And it's also normal to have those concerns. It's normal to question yourself. It's normal to doubt yourself, I guess, to an extent, but that's just because you care. And it's about kind of channeling that passion to want to do well. It's channeling that into the steps that you need to take to get there, rather than thinking, oh, hi guys, I've got a business, then expecting it all to come to you. It's easy to see the tip of the iceberg in it and not, everything that's underneath it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits as well of having this sort of setup where when we join organisations, so I had you to talk to, Adam, and it might be that sometimes I'd pick up the phone to you, I'd tell you about an issue I've got, and in my own head I might solve the problem myself as soon as I say it out loud, which happens a lot, doesn't it? But by having that person to reach out to, it might be that you come up with a completely different perspective and something I've missed. Doesn't matter which of those two is right, they both add value. Now, being 18 months in, I said to you, didn't I, Adam, I've got a picture of our first Zoom call that I posted on LinkedIn saying, like, I don't recognize that guy on the left, which is me. I don't recognize that person because it's like this nervous individual that's, well, relatively nervous about starting a business that doesn't know what's in front of them. Whereas now I'm like the voice of reason to other agents that are coming through it. So I think the benefit of being 18 months in and now bringing on new agents, for example, is that, I don't know about you, Ben, but I lay it on the line. I say to people, look, this is what you should expect. You should expect a massive amount of enthusiasm the weekend before you start. You should expect to feel a bit odd on Monday when your motivation is at like 10 out of 10 level, but you've got no database. So you're like the absolute definition of a busy idiot, because you're going, I just want to do something positive, but I don't know where to start. Whereas like now I lay it on, I say, look, and you're probably going to feel a bit weird after month 3, month 4, which is the point where your enthusiasm is at the lowest point because you've been doing it for 3 or 4 months. You're also still a month, maybe 2 away from earning any money. So you're kind of right in the middle. So it's the worst possible point to be. But this is where it starts to get easier every day. And I know they say, well, it's dawn is, what is it? It's darkest before dawn or something along those lines. That couldn't be any more true in business. The second things start to improve, they then get better every single day. And then you get to the point where, okay, I've been through that. So if I've got to face it again, I know what to do. But I do wonder if I'd have started up completely on my own without EXP and without having a relationship with you, Adam. I mean, we already know the answer for Ben. If Ben thought about throwing it in 3 times before, and you've sort of convinced him to stay and look where he is now, that suggests to me that if Ben had been in his spare room on his own, it could have ended in tears and not gone as well, because you wouldn't have had Adam to reach out to, right?
Yeah, I'm getting good at those pep talks. Actually, I have quite a lot of them. That's part of my role, isn't it? I do that hashtag here when you need me on a lot of my posts, and that's because I know what people are going through. I've been there, I've done it. Again, that's one of the things I guess about having got the gig in the first place. Going back to that question, was the fact that I've been there and done it, scaled up a business, know how to do it from on peanuts as well. And I think the other thing, I recorded a video the other day about the 10 things I've learned about self-employed agency, and I think in one of the videos I said something along the lines of, when I started Hatched, I had 2 business partners, and I look back now and like they were the only 2 people I had to speak to about the business. I couldn't speak to my wife, I couldn't speak to my family. They didn't know what I was going through. They didn't know what, they didn't know anything of what I was going through at all at that time. And so me and James were the only 3 that were able to talk to each other and bounce ideas off of each other. And actually, had I not had those 2 guys, there's no way we'd have lasted. Not a chance. No way would we have been able to have those difficult conversations, those motivational conversations with each other. When one of us is down, the other one was up. We were able to pick each other up. And again, that's how I see EXP. If you're on your own, it's you can't have those conversations with anybody. Whereas if you're on your own with EXP, you've got me and you've got you 2, and you've got, nearly 200 other agents in the network that are more than willing to help because they've been there as well. They've been in that position. They were there a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and they know exactly how you're feeling. And that is one of the beauties of the EXP. It's like having a partner. It's like having a business partner that's been there and done it, and that you can talk to about anything really. And that I filmed that video a couple of days ago, and it was, I was reliving that, and it's very, very true. No question.
Sort of liken it to, I've said to someone before, I think that the way the EXP collaboration works is sort of how you want your ideal next door neighbor to be, right? Which is that you don't want your next door neighbor to be jumping up, how you doing, when you're sort of trying to sneakily chuck away a bottle of wine in your pants. But you do want them to be in when you haven't got a Phillips head screwdriver. And so at EXP, basically everybody's leaving you alone unless you need something. And I mean, the negatives there, we're focusing, because I think a lot of people maybe listening to the podcast are people who are considering entering into self-employment. So we're talking about how to get your business started. But on the flip side of that, now I'm having more conversations with people that are saying things like, I've cleared 15 grand this month. What do I need to do? What do I need to watch out for? And again, being a year and a half in and having run businesses before, I'm able to say to those people, look, that is great, but tip is here, financially talk to your accountant, but also how important it is to keep your foot on the gas, right? You haven't made it yet. And sometimes you need that reality check too, right? That this isn't going to carry on. I read this the other day, that there's something like 300,000 people in the UK are going to earn more than £100,000 in a year, and something like 3/4 of those will only ever do that once in their lifetime. So there'll be a lot of people out there that can claim to be a six-figure earner, but the stats are absolutely unbelievable. The stat to maintain that is so rare that someone can continually do it. And so I think that's really important too, to remind people as well. Like, I need that reminder. Sometimes I think I've absolutely cracked it, and I need people to say, yeah, but if you're not out still winning instructions and doing sales and out in the community, like, that will dry up fast as well, I think.
Yeah, no, it does, man. I know this is dead cliche, but the one thing that I'm thinking about, just kind of listening to you two say your pieces there, is, you know, that old expression that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I look back now at the people that I mean, albeit we're living in this virtual world where we've not actually seen people face to face for a long time because of COVID, but, you know, the people that I speak to pretty aggressively every week. I speak to you, Adam, Scott, I speak to you, speak to Rich quite a lot, guy over in the States, for those of you that don't know Rich, you know, Barry, other agents in the network. And it's kind of like I'm speaking to people now who have achieved things that I've never achieved. And it's like I'm learning from these people like a sponge, and that's allowing me to up my game and my own expectations of what I'm capable of, which allows me to kind of push things to that next level. And if I didn't have that social support, if I didn't have those people kind of showing me the path that they've already walked before me, arguably I wouldn't have that vision and the bravery and the conviction to make the pivot in my business that I am, to take it where I want it to be in a couple of years' time. So I think that's huge as well, like, for giving you that guidance, but also to help you raise your game and arguably kind of encourage you to achieve more of yourself than even you thought possible, you know, once upon a time, which is massive as well.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I think it's really important. And I mean, yeah, I believe in everything you've just said. Totally agree.
Awesome. Adam, I've got a question for you. So, and I don't know what you can say in terms of numbers and targets and things, but question for you is, how big do you think EXP can be in the UK? And I know it might be difficult for you to talk about specific agent numbers. I don't know what you can say with that, but how big the opportunity is for EXP and self-employment in the UK, but also what the threats are to that as well.
You bastard.
I know. I don't know. The reason to give you some thinking time, the reason I asked that question is because, you know, as you know, the biggest thing, what's the biggest thing? Ironically, at EXP, the biggest objection is it's too good to be true, right? That's the biggest objection we come up against, is it's too good to be true. So I think I'm still looking for the threats all the time. Doesn't matter how well it's going. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder at, well, what model could somebody start that would wipe us out? What could happen to our model that would wipe us out or hinder our growth? But really, the reason I'm looking for that is because actually, I personally think the model is very, very robust.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the growth side of it, I mean, I've made predictions in the past and got absolutely hammered for them. So I think we have a model that allows agents to be their own boss, and I think the timing is perfect for it. And I don't see any reason why we can't continue the growth and, you know, become a household name. Frankly, that's what I believe. The condition of them launching in the UK was no territories, and I think that allows it. The second condition that I remembered has now just gone out of my bloody head again. Oh, it was make it really easy to leave. That was the other condition. Make 2 weeks notice, take your properties with you. That was the other condition. And I went, what are you talking about? So that actually, ironically, is probably the threat in a way. You know, we make it too easy for people to leave. So therefore we have to continue to add the value. And that's my job. I have to continue to add the value to agents to see why they should stick with EXP and not completely go on their own.
And leaving involves, we allow agents to take their stock and their pipeline, which is pretty.
And the data.
Take the stock, data, their leads. We carry on paying them their pipeline. They can't take the whole pipeline, but we carry on paying them the pipeline. Yeah. So that's one of our threats, I would say, is that we are used as a stepping stone for people to go it completely alone, because we sort of give them that confidence. But then I think there's a lot of businesses that are using themselves as a stepping stone to EXP. You know, you look at, I'm not bothered about naming names. So you look at the Heart model, the partnership model. That I've spoken to a lot of Heart agents who are working from home now, who are testing the model to see if they can make it stable,
isn't it? It's literally a stable.
Yeah, they're getting paid a salary, a basic salary, They're working from home, so they think to themselves, right, I'll take this step at heart first. I'll see how it works out. If I can make it work, then I'm going to jump to EXP, because EXP is not basic salary. I'm going to pay a hell of a lot more than I would at heart. And then on top of that, because of the way we work in the UK, I think that we've got that threat of people going out and being on their own. I think we can get to a size in a short period of time where I don't want to use the American words, but the brokerage model, which is what it's called in America, is seen as, it's become standard, because there's going to be a lot of copycats, like you say, Scott. There's going to be people that come in and copy. There's going to be people coming and do 80-20, and there are already people that are doing 80-20, but they can't offer ownership of the business. They can't offer revenue share. There's loads of things they can't offer at 80-20 that we can at 70-30.
They're not letting you put your name on the board, are they? And
not
I think
personalising you. Yeah, exactly. They're making it about themselves still, just like Purple Bricks make it about Purple Bricks, quite rightly. No criticism, but that's what these other models are doing as well, is they're making it about them, and you're still building someone else's business. With this business, you're building your own business, and you're building the big business, which you're going to benefit out of as well. I mean, that's the crazy thing that people don't seem to see, is that you have the entire slice of your pie, and you've got a tiny slice of an enormous pie. That's brilliant. I mean, why wouldn't you want that? So threat-wise, yeah, I mean, there's going to be people that copy. There's going to be people that come in and do that. There's always going to be a threat. But like you said a minute ago, Scott, or Ben, I can't remember what it was about the whole Rightmove thing. Threats can be turned into opportunities. And that is the whole point of a SWOT analysis. As strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. As you turn the threats into the opportunities, that's how you deal with threats. So yeah, no, I've got my eye on everybody, seeing what's going on.
I mean, like, it blows my mind. Like, it genuinely does. I know I've said this to you guys on and off camera in the past, but it just, it's like that whole thing, innit? You train people, and so well that they can leave if they wanted to, but you look after them and treat them in such a way that they never feel the want or need to leave you. I think, was it Richard Branson who said that? But effectively, that's kind of what we're trying to do in a way, is sort of give people that freedom, that autonomy to kind of leverage the model to benefit themselves directly. But the intricacies of the business, which, this could be a 10-hour podcast in itself if we started to do a bit of a deep dive into revenue share and then stock acquisition and all that kind of stuff. There's just nothing like it. It's as simple. It blows my mind how intelligent the model is once you look under the bonnet and start to really assess the macro opportunity. I think a lot of the time what agents do is they're like, oh, what the splits? All right, okay. And then don't get me wrong, the splits on agency is part of it. We're all here to transact and produce, and we all want to earn as much money as we can from the houses that we're selling. But the overall framework and the opportunity the model gives you is just absolutely, it's not even life-changing. I mean, I said to my missus the other day, I was like, I know this sounds like a bold thing to say, but I'm not worried about making enough money now to look after us and to get our house in a Lake District. I'm not worried about the kids having enough money and having a few quid when I pop it. Now I'm thinking about, how do I retire the next generation? Like, that is literally where it could get to, especially with the global growth. Like, I want my kids to be looked after. Do you know what I mean?
100%, yeah. Someone said to me the other day, an existing agent at EXP, and he said, if you hadn't have got this role, would you be an EXP agent? And I said, yes, 100%. 100% would I have joined EXP, because he said, no, surely you'd have gone off and done belt and braces. Now look, at the time when I didn't know what I know now, which was at the start of EXP, I probably would have gone off and done belt and braces had I not been offered to launch EXP in the UK, if I decided not to launch in the UK. But knowing what I know now, there's no question. If all of a sudden, I got shot from this role, then I'd just be an agent. I mean, I wouldn't go off and try and do something else and be clever, because I can't compete. I can't compete with EXP. Like I say, people keep trying to find the hole, and I keep trying to find it, and I've given up trying to find it now, because I can't. And I know Scott spent a lot of time trying to find it, and lots of other people do. And I say, if I got the boot tomorrow, I'd just be an agent for EXP. I would have no qualms about doing that whatsoever.
Well, me and Ben both said on the phone like last week that to put that because that always sounds a bit far-fetched when you first hear it. But ironically, Ben and I both said we wouldn't swap places with you, mate. Like, we're quite happy having our role as agents and the ability to grow our own business, but without what you've taken on, which is pretty full on, you know, from an operational point of view. I think that's the thing, isn't it? You do take your role, whether it be you or someone else, takes away a lot of the burden from agents. You know, we're not dealing with Rightmove. We're not dealing with Zoopla and paying invoices and managing staff at head office level, or, you know, you do all of that on our behalf. Yeah, I don't think I'd swap, mate. I mean, I might swap your pecking order in the rev share if I could, but, you know, I'm not sure I would swap roles, because I'm the same, mate. If I interviewed for your role and didn't get it, I would just be an agent 100%.
Yeah, no question. No, and someone actually asked me, would you rather do Hatched again? Would you do EXP? Knowing what you know now, EXP every day. I mean, again, 2 years ago, Hatched all the way, you know, But, you know, again, when you talk about rev share and you see the power of that, and you're getting paid a residual income every month from helping others, you know, like you say, Ben, we could do a whole 10 hours on rev share and all the other aspects of EXP, and we're not going to do that. But
I think, though, just to kind of frame that, though, we won't go into this, and me and Scott spoke about this a little bit on last week's episode when we was talking about leverage when it comes to sort of rev share. But just to kind of bring this into focus now, I mean, Adam, you was the first agent on this call to join. You was number 1 in the XP. I was number 5. Scott was number 22? 23. Close. Yeah. Effectively, every single one of us now could never sell. I'm retired, yeah. Scott, you could retire now if you wanted to, I guess, on rev share. You don't have to sell any more houses. You don't need a job. Your bills are now paid for.
Yeah.
On a monthly basis as a result of rev share. And if that doesn't speak volumes as to the opportunity on that side of the business alongside agency to complement what you're doing with selling houses, then I don't know what will. It's absolutely huge.
1 year in, 1 year in as well, which is a scary thought. I think it's hard to know. It's hard to forget what you've learned over the last 12 months, though, right? Like I was saying to Ben, it's quite easy to sound almost arrogant about my decision to join EXP as if it was a really smart business maneuver, whereas actually it was just a good low risk-free option and a way for me to start my own business with very limited outlay, was my first thought. And then but I think what seems to happen with EXP that for me certainly is different to any employed role I've had, is whenever I've been employed, and I know this isn't the case for everyone, but I'll join with a huge level of enthusiasm, and over a period of 9 to probably 6 to 12 months become more and more detached from my love of that role and the company. I can't help it. And I've worked for, you know, my last boss in recruitment was great at making you feel part of the company and the overall, you know, the overall growth, but it still was never mine. So I become more and more detached. With EXP, ironically, I joined detached. I joined on the basis of I'm not looking to build any relationships internally. I'm not looking to, you know, weren't keen on the shares, wasn't interested in that. And actually what I've done is I've grown more and more roots within the business. And now I say we all the time, very, very casually, just say we when we're talking about EXP, because I feel like EXP is my business. Like Ben said earlier, I might as well be a director. I'm not, but I might as well be one, because I care about the direction of the company and the ethos of the company and the culture. You know, I do feel like the whole being transparent and the honesty thing, which every other role I've ever had, transparent means I'm just about the bullshit, doesn't it? Like when a director sits you down and says, I want to be transparent with you, you think, okay, so you just about lied to me is what I'm going to tell you. So I don't like using the word transparent, but I know that here, for example, like I would never exaggerate my pipeline. I would never exaggerate my monthly income. Like I'll tell people to the penny, because I think it's really important to carry on that sort of ethos of the company. And I wouldn't have done that anywhere else. You know, it really has, the experience has changed me as a person, I think.
Yeah, I echo that. I was talking to my ex-business partner actually last week. Like, we're best mates. Like, we were really good mates going into our business together. We did a business together. We both sold it successfully, and we've remained mates ever since. So lucky, because that could have went the other way around. They say don't mix up business and friendships, don't they? But we're still on good terms. But I've never spoke to him about EXP. Like, I've never approached him to do it. And we live in different areas. He's watched the journey from afar. And I was talking to him the other week, and he was like, can I just stop you? You keep saying we, like he thought I took on another business partner, because in his mind, he's only seeing me doing what I'm doing in Blackpool. And I'm saying we, and he's like, oh, who's your business partner? Is it your cameraman? Have you employed someone? Like, what's going on? I was like, no, we, as in a collective, as in we, as in EXP, as in we who are expanded into 3 new countries every year. We who are growing a global team that's transcending the planet. Like that's what I mean by we. And I think it's difficult sometimes for people on the outside looking in to kind of see that, but it kind of swings back to this word that I've used about 4 times now, that culture. Like one collective movement and being part of a much bigger picture, something bigger than yourself. And I think money's cool, but that sense of mission, that sense of purpose, that sense of fulfillment is absolutely massive and can't be underestimated. And that's, I think, what we've got by the bucket load.
Yeah, agreed. That's why, people say things like, oh, if I had all of Mick Jagger's money, I'd retire. And you're like, well, that's why you don't, and why he does, right? It's because he's absolutely not jumping around on stage like a lunatic still at, I don't know, 110 or whatever he is now. He loves what he does, and as a result, he's really good at it, and then the money follows, right? And that's why the key is always, and I think I've always chased the money in the past, whereas now I've always had these sort of smaller goals that the money follows, which is, my target is I want to help 100 agents earn more than 100 grand. I think imagine that. Imagine going and earning like 200 grand yourself, Ben, but that's because you helped 100 people earn 100. Like,
I know, yeah.
That's some mission, isn't it? And that's a rightful reward for achieving that. But by having that goal in mind, that's definitely given me more clarity than just constantly chasing an amount of money.
Money follows success. Always has done, always will do.
Yeah, I agree.
It's always the thing that I've banged on about since my Hatch days. Was I wanted to become the biggest agent in the country. And, I wanted to change estate agency. Changing estate agency has always been, I've always felt that estate agency needs changing. And I haven't worked out what it was until now. And I thought it was fees back then. I think it's service now, and that personalization of the service to the customer. And as long as that's my entire focus was that, and will continue to be changing estate agency so that the customer benefits. It's always been about the customer for me. But in the meantime, if I can help some agents get rich and retire early as well, then that's an even, that's an even sweeter price to have as well, isn't it?
It is about
the last question for me. Sorry, go on, Ben.
No, I was just going to say it is definitely about the customer, but I think like in the past, like every other model that's come to revolutionize the space in the past, and I include Hatched in this as well, Adam, because you was quite early in your inception of that sort of low fixed fee model. Every time someone's come in to transform the space, it's been literally to target the consumer and to drop fees or to do it. I think we're the first ones to really sort of crack that piece about actually the key to cracking the industry is to crack it for the agent. If the agent's winning, that's the first domino in a series of dominoes that eventually is going to result in the customer getting the best possible experience and then transforming the perceptions of an entire market. And looking after the agent is effectively the key to the door for changing the industry, right? And I think
that drives my question there. So funny enough, Ben, well, I know we agreed to disagree more, but my question I just wrote down, which I don't know if you can see there or not, was, will this drive fees up? If we fast forward in 10 years and 80% of agents in the UK are self-employed, when agents start to value themselves and their own service they can offer, do you think they're going to value themselves higher in 10 years' time than they do right now, and therefore be able to charge a higher fee?
Yeah, so the biggest lesson I've learned from the US is that it's all about the agent. That's because the agent will be the one that delivers the service to the customer. And so the customer ultimately wins, like you said, Ben. And Richard Branson also said, if you look after your staff will look after your customers. And although agents aren't our staff, as long as we look after our agents, they'll look after our customers. And so it's a similar sort of ethos to what Richard Branson says.
Branson's getting some serious airtime today, by the way. Shout out Richard Branson.
From legends like ourselves as well.
Funny enough, he's on with us next week, isn't he?
The only way he's down from Adam Day.
So I think the more we empower the agent in the UK, which is what they've done pretty much every other country in the world, it's all about the agent. It's not about the customer. The agent looks after the customer. The more we empower the agent, the more the agent will believe in themselves, the service they're giving, the more the customer will appreciate the service they're being given and the experience they're receiving. And therefore, the only way that fees can go is up from there. If you continue to be vanilla, estate agent A, estate agent B, estate agent C, estate agent D in the town as a branch, where basically you're all the same, you just got different colors, different names, but you say the same, you sound the same, you smell the same, you talk the same. You've got the same, we've been established in Hitchin for 25 years and we sell da, 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 da.
Well, then you're like banking, aren't you? Then you might as well be a bank. they all do the same thing. No one really gives a shit what bank they use. I've been with them since I was 15. I'll stay with them.
Exactly. And so it all comes down to fee. I choose my mortgage based on the cheapest interest rate. I don't choose it based on the bank and who I'm going to use. It's right, who's the cheapest interest rate? I'm going to choose you because they all look the same, sound the same. I choose my plumber because I know he's good. I don't care who he works for. I choose my architect for the same reason, my accountant for the same reason. I pay them handsomely for providing me with a good service, personalized service that's fit for me.
Did you just say you choose your architect?
Well,
this is maybe a little insight into things are going pretty well for Adam Day.
Yeah, no. I saw you smoking at that, Scott. I saw you smoking at that. I did a video the other day. I did a video again the other day about becoming an agent for life, and the fact that you have I've only used this architect once, but I will use him for life. His name's Colin. I don't even know where he works. I just know his name's Colin, and I've got his name, Colin the architect, in my phone. The same as I've got in my Lisa the accountant and Debbie the lawyer, and people like that. I needed a lawyer a few years ago as well. So not for anything dodgy.
Yeah, said about that the better.
yeah. But so I think these people are paid the most amount of money. When they are personally branded and attached to the service they're offering you. And so I do think that as agents, if we grasp that nettle and become the agent rather than the agency, then we can drive fees up, and the consumer will be happy to pay it because they're getting a better experience and they're getting that agent for life and that advice for life as well.
Yeah, I think that's the direction it's going in. I think we proved, ironically, we've got to higher fees by proving that the low fee model doesn't work, which is just fascinating in itself. I think right now most agents are thinking, well, I hope our fees return to where they used to be now that there's the lower fee options are less fashionable. But ironically, I think we could find ourselves going to 2.5%, 3%. And I also think we're probably going to go in a direction of more collaboration amongst individual agents as well. With, I've got a buyer, can I introduce your buyer? It's not just the American model, is it? That's the global model, really. We're the ones that do it differently.
We're the odd ones out. Yeah, that's for sure.
Ultimately, the customer just wants the result, and they're kind of trusting you to get that result, whether that lead comes from Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whether it comes from your personal network of buyers or Rightmove. They don't really care as long as they get the right price in a timely fashion, do they? So I think it's right, and we start seeing the early signs of that now. I mentioned in the other podcast the other week, didn't I, Scott, about how me and a couple of the agents here in the Fylde Coast are swapping buyers, and I'm sending leads over if it doesn't fit my business, and we're kind of helping each other grow in that respect. And I think for me, that's the way that agency should be done. I think the biggest barrier to agents getting fees, though, and we're talking about, well, we can get to that point where we're charging 1.5%, 2.5% as standard. I actually think we're there now. I really do. I think the reason why we're not seeing that in some cases is that it's agents battling themselves in the living room, and they're perceiving fees and the fact that they're going to be sole agency instead of multi. They're painting that in their mind to be a bigger objection to the client than what it actually is in reality, if that makes sense. I've got an agent that I speak to quite fluently, and I won't mention his name, but we was talking about, for me, the whole question about sole and multi-agency has never been a thing. Like it's not even an option in my mind that I'll offer multi-agency. I don't care if it's £1 million fee. I'm not doing multi-agency. It's just never been an option. Don't do it. Don't believe in it. I'm always sole. He's the opposite. Where he's worked, he's been conditioned to think, oh, just go multi to get the instruction, to get the board up. And I'm like, he's like, I need to stop doing multi-agency. I'm like, why are you doing that? He was like, because that's what customers in my market want. I was like, mate, next time you go in for the next 5 valuations, please promise me, no matter how it goes, say you're a sole agent and explain the reasons as for why and stick with it. And he signed them all up on a sole agency basis. It was only his psychology that wouldn't allow the words to come out of his mouth to get it. And now he's doing it. He's proven to himself that actually that was an objection in his mind based on what's been groomed into him from a past employer and their belief system, not what's actually the reality. And I think sometimes like going out there and just asking for the business and pitching the business that's right for you in terms of fees, terms, tie-in periods, contract types, all that kind of stuff, do what's right for you. And as long as the customer wants to work with you, they're going to buy into that and follow suit. So I think we are very much there where we can be charging these 1.5% to 2.5% fees if we've just got the belief in ourselves to quote that and run with it. Like I really, really do.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about the mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely.
Well, look, Adam, you've got a meeting with your architect and build team, so I know you're too humble to say.
If only.
But mate, thanks for joining us on this thing. And it's always good to catch up. I think your input has been great. I really appreciate you jumping on with us.
Yeah,
No problem.
Branson
Thanks
next
for having me in. Yeah. Good. Like you say, it's only downhill from now, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Thanks again for your time.
All right. Cheers, guys.